Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session of the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the examination point of view. So let's start today's discussion by taking up the important articles featuring in the newspaper. Let's take up the first article of the day. The first article which is appearing in the newspaper reads, Freebies, a judicial lead and a multi-layered issue. Now, the current editorial, obviously as we can see, pertains to the much talked of issue in the recent times, that of freebies. So, we have already done a discussion on freebies, and our conclusion our discussion has been on the lines of as to how first it needs to be distinguished as to which type of services are welfare services and which type of services are freebies. We also have seen as to how there are certain disadvantages or cons that arise from giving free services to the general public, and how it can put a load on expenditure on the state and central exchequer and their bank accounts. So we have seen that discussion. So what is new in this article? In this article, the author tries to dig deep into the issue of freebies and tries to identify what exactly are meant by freebies, and it says that how the freebies are a multi-layered concept. It cannot be understood in a very simple manner, and it needs to be looked into in a very holistical manner as to what exactly are freebies. So we'll try to take the perspective of this article, and it becomes important for us from the perspective of GS3, where we have this issue. So let's start. Why is this issue raging? We all know that the discussion is going on because the Honorable PM gave a statement that such kind of freebies given by political parties to the general public, and he termed it as the Revdi culture. So this type of culture is not a good culture, and consequently then even the Supreme Court jumped into this debate, wherein now it is also deliberating on the issue, and it has already proposed a all party body to debate on this, and it might even go on to pronounce a judgment or some kind of an order in it. That has not yet come in, but we are awaiting Supreme Court's response on it. But Supreme Court has definitely initiated an action on it and a discussion on it. So therefore, on this context the editorial appears, and the author tries to first establish this, that whenever we talk about freebies or those services or products which the political parties or governments give to the general public as a form of concessions, as a form of free services or subsidized services, these are known as freebies. So the debate is all about whether these free services or subsidized services are bad for the economy, are bad for the central and state exchequers or not. So in this context, the author first says that the freebies are a very multi-layered issue, which means that we need to understand that there are a lot of services and a lot of products that are given by the government that can be considered as freebies, or they can be clubbed under the category of freebies, and we need to see whether they are really freebies or they are welfare oriented measures. So freebies can also be called as subsidies or transfer payments. So if at the elections season time, if there is any political party which promises free electricity or free television sets, that can be counted as freebies. Then if any political party or any state government or central government promises loan waiver, or let's say the farm loan waiver or loan waiver on other sectors, so that is waiving of the loan, that can be also clubbed under such a thing. Then all the subsidies that are given. So for example, the central government gives the LPG cylinder subsidy, which means that the poor households can buy the LPG cylinders on a subsidized prices. So that can also be clubbed under the same concept. Then there are something known as the transfer payments. These are those kind of payments which the government transfers to the beneficiaries' accounts under some schemes. So yesterday we saw the PM Kisan scheme, wherein a certain allowance is given to the farmers to manage their non-farm expenses. So that comes under the transfer payments. So this is how first the author says that there are various aspects of services which the governments indulge into, which can be clubbed under the category of freebies, and therefore we need to be very careful as to what we are calling freebies. Then such subsidies exist in agriculture subsidies, then health and educational services, as we have seen, are there, such as the midday meal scheme is there, and various other schemes exist which actually give benefit to the general public and are at subsidized cost or a lesser cost. So then all of these services can be clubbed under freebies. Then the highlight point about this article is that then the author tries to take up data from the government's budget as to, he takes up data from the government's budget to showcase what has been the exact extent of giving these services, subsidized services to the general public, and how is it connected to the overall revenue collection of the government. So we'll come to that data in a bit, but this is what the author uses as the evidence for it. So then he also goes on to try to define what are subsidies. When we talk about this issue, freebies being good or bad and subsidies being a part of it, what exactly are subsidies? He tries to define it. So what are subsidies? Whenever we say, let's say we talked about LPG subsidy over here. So any form of payment or any form of income or price support that is granted by the government, that is known as a subsidy. That this is how the author highlights or author defines. But the flip part about this definition is that, so not only any form of income or price support, so therefore it not only includes any direct transfer payments, which means that a positive price support that is given to the citizens, but also the taxes and charges that are not collected. So this is the negative aspect of the freebies, wherein that kind of a price support which is given, even that is subsidy, and those taxes and charges that are not collected, subsequently foregone, are also a part of the subsidies, which is a very important aspect according to the author to look at for us to understand the whole ambit of this freebies and subsidized services culture that every government indulges into. And this is where he points out the data from the union budget, wherein last year it provided a document which is the data on direct subsidies and transfer payments. This data is from year 2006 to 2007 as a statement titled Revenue Foregone under the Central Tax System, which is annexed to the Receipts budget. Now the budget has various parts, the estimates, revised estimates, receipts budget. So under the receipts budget part, there is a separate statement called the Revenue Foregone under the Central Tax System. Now this statement, which was released from the year 2006, has been now changed to, the words revenue foregone have been changed to tax incentives. So this changing of words has been done, but the essence remains the same, that this is the data which is going to provide us with the actual extent as to how much money has been spent on these kind of services, either facilitating some service to someone by price support or income support, or foregoing the revenue or not collecting the tax or charge which was due to be collected on a certain service. So what does this data say? It says that this particular report on this revenue foregone says that in 2010-11 it was 21% of the direct tax revenue, and in 2019-2020 it has reached to 22% of the direct tax revenue. What does this mean? That of the total direct tax revenue, what is the direct tax? There are two types of taxes, direct tax and indirect tax. Indirect tax is the GST that we pay on products, that kind of tax which we are not directly paying but are indirectly paying. So we pay taxes on the products, those become indirect taxes. And direct taxes are what? Income tax is an example of a direct tax, wherein we pay the tax directly to the government. So out of the total direct tax revenue, 21% of it went into foregoing in the revenue, and it reached to the level of 22%. So this can be shown as a significant figure to highlight as to how much the government is foregoing as its revenue. So this is symbolic of the fact that, which means that every government is indulging into such kind of subsidies and foregoing of the revenue. So therefore this is an important information to take note of. And this kind of, when we say tax incentives, so what are tax incentives? So this is an interesting definition that is given by the author, known as tax preferences. What are these tax preferences? So whenever we talk about foregoing the revenue by not collecting the taxes, there are various methods by which this can be done. And these are known as tax preferences, which means that a range of measures that includes special tax rates. There can be special tax rates for special people or special activities carried out by people. There can be exemptions on these taxes, deductions, rebates, deferrals and credits, all of which affect level and distribution of tax. And these measures are often called tax preferences. So the government indulges into various types of tax preferences. How so? Under the Income Tax Act, tax preferences are given to citizens, which means that below a certain slab of income earning, people do not have to pay income tax, or they have to pay less of it. So which means that they are doing it for boosting the savings of the citizens. Then there are tax preferences under the Customs Act, which means that anyone who's exporting goods out of the country has to pay customs duty. So such kind of incentives can be given where they have to pay low customs duty. So this is to boost their exports. So these kind of tax preferences are also given. Then the other tax preference which everyone keeps talking about in this freebies debate is the corporate tax cuts, which means that the government has levied less taxes or foregone a lot of taxes on the corporates, which means that in order to help them conduct their business and increase their investment, the government decides that we will be collecting less taxes from the corporates, and this is known as cuts in the corporate tax. So all of these services actually mean that they are being provided at a subsidized rates or can be clubbed under a definition of freebies in some manner or the other. And as with the debate of freebies that is going on, that we need to see that a balance is made. That is the way forward also, which the author suggests, that it needs to be first needs to be distinguished which type of a service is freebie, that is negatively harming the state and central exchequer, and which kind of a service is welfare oriented service and it is very crucial for the economy and the citizens of the country. So this understanding first needs to be done, and then the author suggests that after discussing all of these subsidies, it needs to be kept in mind that we also need to move beyond these subsidies, because only giving price support or foregoing the revenue is not going to benefit us in the long term. What is required is massive public investment and also private investment in the critical sectors like health, education and agriculture is needed. So this is the way forward which author suggests, that we also need to look at the flip side of the subsidies and focus on investing and building assets in these critical sectors, such as in health, wherein we have even less than 1.5% of our GDP spending that we are doing on health. Even in education, less than 3% of the GDP spending is done on education. And agriculture also, the spending is very dismal. So the author highlights this, that we need to up our investment game and look at the freebies debate in a holistic manner. So this was a discussion related to the newer aspects or findings which we can collect in this debate. And with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, Bank credit growth accelerated to 14.2% in quarter ending in June. Now this is an article featuring in the newspaper talking about the important concept of bank credit growth. What do we mean by bank credit growth? So we go to the bank to either deposit the money or avail loan. So whatever loan the banks give, that is known as credit, giving credit. So bank credit growth would mean as to what is the rate of growth of credit creation or giving of loans by the banks to general public. So the article highlights as to how there has been a growth in the bank credit rates. So, and this comes in the backdrop of, we've taken this earlier as well, this comes in the backdrop of the RBI increasing the repo rate. So we have seen that from the month of May, the RBI is increasing the repo rate. What is the repo rate? The repo rate is the rate at which the Reserve Bank of India grants loans to the other banks. Then these banks consequently give loans and take deposits from the general public. So why did the RBI increase the repo rate? It did so to tame the inflation, to treat the general price rise which is happening in the country. The prices of commodities are rising. To tame this, to make the price rise come to a decreased level, the repo rate was increased. So what this should mean, that if the repo rate is increasing, the banks should be discouraged to take loans from the RBI, and if the banks are discouraged from taking loans from the RBI, it should trickle down to the economy as well, and consequently the banks should also be giving less loans to the public. But is that happening? This is not the case, at least right now, which means that the effects of the repo rate policy changes are not yet visible, and the bank credit growth is still increasing. So let's talk about how much it has increased. So where it was 6% on last year in the same month, that of June, it is now 14.2%. So there has been a massive increase in the bank credit growth, and this has been highlighted in the Reserve Bank's quarterly statistics on deposits and credit of the scheduled commercial banks for June 2022. And the interesting part is that this credit growth has been broad based, which means that out of the length and breadth of the country and in various stratas, the growth has been balanced and equally distributed, which means that the growth has been seen in all population groups, be that in rural, semi-urban, urban and metropolitan regions. So in all these regions, growth has been seen. Then all the bank groups have also seen increased credit growth, be them public or private sector banks, foreign banks, regional rural banks or state financial banks. And all the regions of the country, which means that central, eastern, northeastern or northern, southern and western, all the regions of the country are also seeing credit growth in a positive direction. They have recorded double-digit annual credit growth in June 2022. So this is also an interesting part to see that credit is growing, and it is also growing in all kinds of sectors, wherein be that region-wise, population group-wise or bank group-wise. So this can be an important data, and a question in the prelims examination can come with the trend of the bank credit. So this can be an important fact to remember from the prelims examination point of view. And with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article now, which appears in the newspaper, reads, India, Bangladesh discuss river water sharing issues. Now this is an issue which we had taken earlier, wherein the news had appeared where the water ministers of both countries and other counterparts were going to meet, and they were going to discuss the river water sharing issues between India and Bangladesh. And now the article appears wherein these water ministers of both countries have met, and they have discussed on sharing of the water between India and Bangladesh. And which is this body which is discussed? This we'll discuss about it. So this body which is formed to discuss the river sharing between both countries is known as the Joint Water Commission. And this becomes important for us from the examination point of view. And the other fact which becomes important from our prelims examination point of view are the major rivers which India and Bangladesh share, which we should keep an eye on and have a knowledge of. So first about these Joint Water Commission. So when was this Joint Water Commission formed? So an Indo-Bangladesh Joint Rivers Commission, or JRC, is functioning since 1972, and it was established to ensure the most effective joint efforts in maximizing the benefits of common river system. Now India shares the largest land boundary with Bangladesh, and that is why it is obvious that it must be sharing a lot of rivers with the country. So India and Bangladesh share 54 small and large rivers. Therefore, there will be agreements and discussions happening on how to share these rivers, and for that purpose this Joint River Commission was formed, and this is headed by the water resources ministers of both the countries. And this JRC, it was what met and discussed on sharing waters on major rivers which the two countries share, that is the Ganga, Tista, Manu, Muhuri, Khowai, Gomti, Dharla, Dudh Kumar and Kushiara. So the names of these rivers are what become important for us to focus on. All of these rivers either appear from the northeast and then enter into the Bangladesh, such as the river Manu, Muhuri, Khowai, Gomti. All of these arise from the Tripura hills and then enter into Bangladesh. Kushiara is a distributary we had seen of the river Barak, and Dudh Kumar arrives from the West Bengal region. So these rivers become important for us to focus from the prelims examination point of view. So this was our discussion with respect to the Indo-Bangladesh Joint Rivers Commission, and we come to an end of today's discussion, and we'll meet again tomorrow taking up the important articles from tomorrow's newspaper. Thank you.